friends, welcome back. Thanks so much for joining me today. Happy November. Hope you are staying warm wherever you are. I thought today it would be fun to look at what fruit do we have at this time of year locally. And here in Central Virginia, we have apples. Apples are everywhere. We've got tons of orchards, some that have been in families for hundreds of generations. To go with your family, to pick them from the trees, there's really nothing quite like it. So I hope wherever you are, you find a place where you can meet the farmers, where you can pick the fruit yourself. It's awesome, and it's a great way to spend a fall Saturday with your family, I promise. But for food, what do you do with apples besides just eat them out of hand? There's tons you can do. And I don't know about y'all, but I love comfort food and foods from my childhood. And we used to have pigs in a blanket, hot dogs, rolled in crescent rolls all the time as children. And while that is still delicious, I think we can kind of take it up a quick notch and see what can we make for our families now that have that same comfort feeling. So I thought we would do pigs in a blanket and a salad. We haven't done a whole lot of salads, and at least here in November, we can still get lettuces. Dark leafy greens will grow until the snows. And although it did snow here this morning, I'm hoping we're not quite in snow season yet. So we do still have lettuce. So we're going to do pigs in a blanket and a lettuce with an apple cider reduction vinaigrette. So let's get started on our pigs in a blanket. We're actually going to be using pork sausage, which is over here. You could use chicken sausage, you could use turkey sausage if you have either. So that, I've already started off a little bit. I'm going to keep it going so that that's cooked through. The cooking in the oven part is really only going to be to cook the biscuit part. So what you also see back here is some apple cider. And our apple cider has started to burn, unfortunately. We'll start that again, no problem. With apple cider, it's got so much sugar in it that sometimes in just a blink of an eye, it'll go from boiling to burn. So that's what's happened here. We'll start a new pot of that, no problem. If that happens, just make sure you have a big enough jug that you can do it again. Not a worry whatsoever. That'll be for our salad vinaigrette. So that's what that is for back there. We'll get that going. But let's start with the biscuit dough. Homemade bread is really easy to do if you just have a little bit of time, especially a biscuit dough because it doesn't have to rise at all. So it's really easy to just make it and go for it. In here we have 2 cups of flour and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now you see the flour looks a little brown. It's not whole wheat flour, it's actually white flour. But because it's made at our local mill here, they don't bleach it. So it will look a little more brown than a normal white flour that you get from the grocery store somewhere. But it tastes delicious and it doesn't taste really weedy, I promise. That's in here. To that we're going to cut in 4 tablespoons of butter. There are a couple ways to do this. The thing when you're making any bread that has a butter in it, if it's pie crust, if it's brioche, if it's challah, whatever you're making, you want to make sure your butter stays really, really cold. Because what happens is, as the butter gets hot, as it melts, it releases steam from the water inside, and that's what causes your bread to rise. You get those little pockets of air inside that makes it really light and really flaky. If your butter is warm or if it's melted, it won't be able to melt and create steam in your oven, so you won't get those little pockets of flakiness. So I just used 2 forks. You can use your fingers. The problem with using your fingers is sometimes your hands are warm and they cause the butter to melt, and then you've already started with something that won't give you the flakiness that you want. So you're just going to cut in the butter, as you can see here, with these 2 forks until it kind of resembles the size of small peas. You don't want it totally distributed. You don't want to turn it into, cornmeal consistency. You don't want it that small because, again, we want the butter to melt in the oven and to release steam and to create those delicious flaky biscuit layers. Now, if you don't have time to make biscuits at home, I understand. There are lots of prepackaged refrigerated biscuits you can get at the grocery store. If you want to go back to your childhood and use crescent rolls, that's totally fine. But if you are trying to stay local, if you are looking for ways to support local farmers and local millers, this is a great way to just use a local flour and make a really quick biscuit dough. So, as you can see, that's about the size of large peas, no problem. To that we're going to add milk. This is just a regular, this is 2%. Whatever you have is fine. If you want to use heavy cream, it would be delicious, but this is just a regular milk. There is plenty of butter. It calls for about 3/4 of a cup. I'm going to start with 1/2 cup and mix it. You can always add more. What you don't want is for your biscuits to be too wet. Then you'll never be able to roll them out. So start with 1/2 cup, see where that takes you. And it looks like we're going to go ahead and need our whole 3/4 of a cup. So stir that in. this is kind of what your dough is going to look like. It'll come together in the bowl, and all you will need to do is knead it for just a few minutes. Now, before we knead it, the last thing I want to add is some sage. I think sage and apples work wonderfully together. It has a delicious and earthy flavor. It tastes like fall. It smells like fall. Now, here's the only problem. Like I said, it snowed this morning here, and our sage froze. So I'm going to try and see how it works. I've never worked with once frozen sage before, but we love our fresh herbs. We love the herbs that we grow right here on our back porch. So if today is the last day we can use them, then today might be the last day we can use them. But I thought we'd get it in one way or the other. Now I'm going to take a quick break from chopping this sage and go check on the sausages. We've already had one thing burn up today. We don't want another one. Oh, these are looking great. You can hear the sizzle. They've got some really nice grill marks. You do, especially when you're using pork sausage, you want to make sure it's cooked all the way through. Pork has a tendency to carry some yucky bacteria in it when it's raw, so you want to make sure it's cooked through. I know these are going in the oven, but they're not going to be in there long enough to really get a whole lot of cook on the pork inside. They're really just going to be in there long enough to bake the biscuits on the outside. So you do want to make sure that it's cooked all the way through. You don't want any pink left in the middle. So I just added some sage, and the next thing we're going to do is roll out these biscuits. If you have granite countertops, this works great. You can just go right onto here. If you want to pull out some sort of cooking sheet or of a cutting board to roll that on, that's totally fine. But this should be really quick. You're only going to knead it for about 30 seconds. It should all come together. And again, we don't want to manage it too much because you don't want that butter to start melting. So let's scooch that over here. Oh, that sage looks so pretty inside there. And as these cook up, it's just going to kind of crisp the sage. It's going to release its oils. It's just going to be absolutely delicious. Okay, when we take our break, I'll just roll that out so you can see what that's going to look like. Just want to make sure you also know what's going into these pigs in a blanket. We're going to do an apple compote. What I have in this pot right here are 2 chopped apples, some melted butter, and just a splash of apple cider. It's going to cook down, and as it does, it's going to make almost like an applesauce. It's not as smooth as applesauce, but it's going to have that thickness. It's going to be really sweet and tart, and that's going to go in here with our sausages. The only other thing that's also going to go in is a mustard. Now, I don't know of any local mustard purveyors here in our area. I don't think we grow mustard seed, so it's hard to find actual local mustard. There are plenty of people that make local mustard with seed that has been flown in from elsewhere, so that's what I have here. If you can't find the product, I know there's some things like we can't find olive oil here. If there are products that you know aren't made in your area, but there is a purveyor that sells it, it's always a great way to make sure that you're supporting your local businesses as well, even if the food stuff cannot be made local where you are. So just to let you know, we're going to take a quick break. During the break, I'm going to roll this out. I'm going to cut it into triangles. I'm going to slather some mustard, some apple compote, put a sausage on there, roll them up. Those are going to go in the oven about 400 degrees for only 12 minutes, and that should bake the biscuit. When we come back, we'll pull those out. We'll look at those. I'll restart the apple cider so that works for our reduction. We'll make our salad, and we will enjoy a comfort food dinner. See you in a minute.